Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and I thought I'd give a little discourse before we begin our question and answer section. And the idea today is the importance of communal harmony. And I think many of you out there will appreciate this idea of communal harmony. There's, in the air these days, is a fair bit of communal disharmony. And this also relates particularly to Buddhist communities because tomorrow we are ending the rainy season in which monastics commit to a period of a minimum of 3 months to live in community within a similar the same monastery. And they all abide by the rules which govern the community, and they have to relate to each other. And this is a remarkable benefit. If that community can abide in harmony for those 3 months, then they educate each other and uplift each other, and they also carry along the teachings of the Buddha, because as the Buddha said in early years, that if he didn't organize a community and establish it with the structure of the Vinaya are rules of conduct for monks and nuns, and these are what bind the community together and allow it to travel through time. The Buddha made a beautiful simile that if you take a half a dozen or a dozen flowers and put them on a flat board, they're very beautiful, but the wind comes along and blows them away. And if you tie them up with a string, then they do not blow away in the wind. They are a bouquet, a very beautiful bouquet, and that string are all of the various skillful rules and regulations that help the community abide in harmony and with mutual support as well. Sometimes you come as one who is asking to learn, and sometimes you are in the position of one who teaches, or at least can be an example to others in behavior. So the Buddha saw that this is extremely valuable, and anything that's valuable you want to preserve for the rest of humanity and also other beings, not only humanity, but all the sentient beings that are encountered on the planet. They also benefit from a virtuous human community. So everything flourishes when a community of virtue and wisdom abides on the planet. They affect all of the community around them. And so in order for this to proceed, and it has now proceeded for 2,500 years, or 2,600 years perhaps, now it's still enduring and flourishing. And it has to be renewed every generation. It's something like a rope, though. There's a lot of overlapping fibers, so you may come as a junior monk at the end of a very senior monk's life and have a few years in their presence, as happened with me with Ajahn Sona. I came just near the end of his life. But other monks who were my teachers are very much alive, and I have associated with them for 34 years. I'm coming to the end of my 34th rainy season, which is how monks determine their seniority. 34 rainy seasons. It doesn't apply very much in the West. This is the summer for us in the Northern Hemisphere. But in the tropics and in India where the Buddha was, there are 3 seasons, and one of them is the rainy season. And that's the community time, partly due to the climate and weather. It is a bad time for roaming around, but it is a good time for staying in community in one place. So this idea of communal harmony is very, very highly esteemed and reverenced in the Buddhist community, the monastic community, and also the lay community that supports the monastics also appreciates this. And so there are certain special, especially meritorious events which occur, and that is when a group of monks of at least a minimum of 5 monks remains in a monastery in harmony for the entire 3 months. And at the end of those reigns, there is something called a katina, or a celebratory event, and lay people come to the monastery and offer various requisites such as robes and food and all kinds of things that the monks need for support. And it is particularly meritorious because it's a group of monks and they have abided in the same monastery. And it's that the Buddha is featuring the fact of communion, of groups. There's another aspect to monastic life, which is the capacity which you can develop. And this is not necessarily natural to humans, the development of the capacity for the enjoyment of solitude. So this is part of your spiritual practice, is to be a person who is independent and autonomous psychologically. They can abide with enjoyment in their own company and without interaction with other humans. Now, this is not normal for humans. Most humans fear, in some ways, solitude. Perhaps they like 15 minutes away from people, or a half an hour, or an afternoon, perhaps. But the idea of being isolated from other humans terrifies many people. And if they are isolated and they end up having to live alone in some bachelor apartment in a city in an anonymous way, they tend to fill the day with watching television, other people on television and reading about other people in books and so forth. So the idea of abiding without external distraction in silence is a high development of the mind. And it's something that one aspires to. So it's not that monks and nuns should only be able to flourish in community, but they should also attempt to become autonomous beings that can flourish in solitude as well. But there are those who manage or are pushed to the sides of the society, marginalized, not necessarily by choice, and that is because they cannot harmonize with others. So monastic life, and I think the life of any aspiring lay person who aspires to freedom and wisdom and the maximum possibility for happiness, must develop these 2 aspects of their personality. They must be able to function in community in a harmonious way, and they must know what a harmonious community is and what are the basis of a proper harmony in community, and that they also should aspire to their own inner development. Both of these things are very important. So the communal harmony is based on sharing a view of reality and what we would call in the Buddhist tradition right view. And this right view has as a priority in life the nature and the roots of human suffering. How do we suffer? And this is really to do with not the physical suffering of the body, which is virtually inevitable, that the aging, illness, and death are something which the Buddha did not propose to cure. He proposed that you live in a reasonably intelligent way, not to damage yourself, not to ignore the body, but also just with the brute fact that bodies are delicate and vulnerable and exposed to all kinds of illnesses. So Buddhism is does not have an idea that it's possible to go through life by some means of salvation and never have to deal with illness or something like this. It's not part of the Buddhist tradition. We recognize illness as embedded in the human existence. But there is the psychological dimension, and there's much deep, unnecessary suffering in the human mind and heart. And the Buddha is focusing on that to very elevated condition. It is possible to eliminate psychological distress. So this is the view that we're taking. And there are very clear and systematic ways of doing this, attitude changes and so forth, which are not natural to humans. It is natural to humans and normal to humans to inflict suffering on themselves because of a lack of skill and understanding. But it is possible to train and educate yourself out of this. And it greatly helps. It almost is without, it is actually necessary to this process to associate with those who have wisdom and have devoted their lives and freed themselves from some degree of this suffering, and that can communicate and encourage other people to do so as well. So this is where this community, this harmonious community is developed around this. So this process involves an agreement. You don't simply just get along with a whole bunch of diverse people that don't share the same values. It's not going to happen. And of course, this is what we see in the world, is the world at this time in the modern world is very different, even in the last century and a half. Views and opinions about the nature of reality and value structures are very, very diverse and under great scrutiny and question now. Formerly, whole societies, whole continents, in fact, shared similar values and visions. But now it is not the case. And of course, because the world is very small now, people from different cultures, races, religions, philosophies, and the absence of philosophy and religions are all mingling in gigantic modern cities and in various countries. And so, an added aspect to this is this type of medium, the media that we have, where communication between groups is abundant. So one is inundated with all kinds of opinions and views, and who knows what to make of all of this. It's quite an assault upon the sensibilities of humans. So in the midst of this, to think that everybody should just get along is rather a naive thought. So when we talk about communal harmony, we actually talk about a commitment to a community that shares a vision of life. And even then, there are training procedures. We must learn how to speak to each other, how to think about each other, and how to act towards each other. And this is a commitment and a training. So this might be considered similar to joining a professional choir, singing the complex music of European history, the magnificent pieces of classical music. Every singer must understand their part. There are multiple parts in these choirs, and each one needs to know when to be quiet, and when to be loud, and when to be moderate, and what note to sing at what time, and how to pronounce the words so that it all works. So it's a beautiful example of how a large group of people can become a single instrument devoted to the creation of beauty. Large orchestras are the same, and of course this takes many, many years of training, and not everybody makes it. If you don't have some predisposition to this, if you don't have enough training, or if you are attached to your own way of doing things, then the orchestral conductor will notice this and say, it's either you understand it as a group experience rather than an individual experience, or you can't play with the orchestra. So this is the case this is the function of this harmony, this communal harmony. It is to produce one of the most beautiful things in the universe, and that is a human community getting along and helping each other. A friendship is at the root of this, and that is you're concerned with the well-being of others as you are concerned with your own well-being. By the way, your own well-being can't be neglected in the group harmony, and this happens sometimes, that people think that they must abandon concern for their own development because they must preach development to others. Buddha says this is something which is lacking. There are 4 kinds of people the Buddha talks about, and the first of these is a person who neither helps themselves nor helps others. And by helping means that that person does not aspire to and struggle towards the creation of generosity, kindness, clarity, wisdom. They abide in low moral development and stinginess and lack of concern for their own well-being, and they also do not contribute to well-being of others. This is the bottom barrel of the barrel. And the next one up is a person who is concerned about the well-being of others, so they give everybody advice about how they should be generous and kind and lucid and clear and etc. But they themselves neglect their own development. They abide in the stinginess and carelessness and negligence, but they feel free to exhort others to moral loftiness. And this is superior to the other person who does neither. The next one up is one who does take care of oneself, but does not teach others, does not exhort others to develop as well. And this is a higher and better way of doing things, according to the Buddha. We're still not to the top. The level at the top is where one undertakes seriously one's own training and development. By the way, so this is not something that just comes naturally. It's not something that just you're born with. It's something that has to be cultivated. You in fact may have some much more inclination to it, just like in music. Some people seem to have a talent for things, but they still have to cultivate that talent. So the sense with virtue and the aspiration to virtue is something that the individual has to cultivate strongly. But that person also is able and willing to share the ideas and development that they have with others. And so that's the top. That is that one develops the characteristics which allow harmonious communities, and also encourages others to participate in this and how to develop these skills of harmony. So these skills of harmony involve the proper types of speech, how to speak to each other, and one of the emphasis is to speak gently to each other. And of course, you need to sometimes correct others. And not the conductor of an orchestra has to tell a player when they're making a mistake. By the way, if some of you perhaps have been classical musicians, and in the tradition in European history is that the orchestral conductor can be a very intimidating character, very, very harsh personality, and this is fading away apparently in the modern orchestras because they were correcting orchestral members when they played the wrong note, savagely. So this is not how it's done. It just makes everybody nervous and anxious and fearful, and then you tend to make more mistakes. So there is a way of correcting others. It's not that you're not going to do that. That's not kind either, to let it go. So there is the possibility of correcting each other, but you must know whether you're doing it correctly, whether you are actually speaking the truth and that the fault is true. And you should inspect yourself for that before you go fixing everybody else. Am I myself free from this fault? Before you fix everybody else. And then you speak in a gentle way, a kindly way, and a well-informed way. And part of the being kind and gentle is choosing the right time. So this is not something where you start haranguing somebody in the middle of a restaurant or in an inappropriate place. It's choosing the right time. Maybe the person is very tired, is in a very disorganized state of mind or something. That wouldn't be the right time. You wait for the right time to do this. So these are hints that the Buddha left behind about how do you interact with people. And I suppose there are all kinds of management manuals out there giving advice about this, and perhaps they could do well to actually consult the teachings of the Buddha about how to interact with other people. Because this is not just the monastic community. This is the community that you deal with. The other thing that the Buddha talks about is to know your audience, know the person you're talking to, and it's not a matter of just blurting out the truth. It's understanding if that person is going to benefit from what you say. He gives an example of a person who is a miser. If you start giving lectures on generosity, that person who is a miser may get angry about that, because when they look into themselves, they find that virtue is missing. And so they just get angry. Instead of benefiting from what you say, they get angry. And so this is the case that you want to, if a person is not virtuous, is immoral or amoral, and you start lecturing on virtue and morality, they're likely to get just angry. If you start giving sophisticated teachings which only very intelligent people who are wise can understand, to a person who is not intelligent, not well-educated, not wise, they will get angry too, because they find that the contents of what you're saying is lacking in themselves, so they become angry about that. You're not trying to make people angry, and you're not trying to just blast out a fire and brimstone sermon to everybody on the planet. You're trying to communicate and improve other people's lives. So that means there's a quality of assessment of who you're talking to. Now, I must say that one of the problems is that I don't know who I'm talking to right now. Anybody can listen to this. So this is one of the advantages and disadvantages of the modern media. So I'm speaking on YouTube, and who knows where else this will appear, on podcasts, etc. And it will just be whoever happens to click the button and I start talking. And if I start talking about generosity and you are lacking in that, you might just get mad and click me off, which is, it's the disadvantage of talking impersonally to huge audiences. 10,000 people may watch, 50,000 people may watch this. Now, if I was just talking to a few people in a room, I might know them and assess them, and then I would speak in a tailored way to them. And in fact, that's what I do when I talk in a live retreat. Part of giving live retreats is to pre-select the people who attend it. So I would, if I'm giving a long retreat on mindfulness, I would expect that people had been to retreats before and understood the what's expected of them. So I would screen them ahead of time that they were suitable for speaking to about this subject. Just in the same way, if you're going to university and you don't just, people off the street just don't drop into third-year anthropology course. It would be inappropriate, perhaps, because they can't understand, they haven't been brought along on the subject. So this is both the benefit and the drawbacks of this mass media type of communication. However, I think it's valuable enough that people who are suitable and have attention to this and are exposed to this may benefit from this type of urgency to dwell in communal harmony and to find a community which has shared values. You can't expect to just get along with everybody if they don't have shared values. Don't be surprised at all that there is no communal harmony. And this can happen in a family, in a village, in a town, in a club, in a small society, in a large society. So it's actually hopeless if they don't share a vision that they will have harmony and help themselves and others. So this is part of the realization, the process of screening. So I will leave that for your reflection today, and we will move on to some Q&A for the remainder of the time.
Ajahn, our first question is from John in Twickenham, Middlesex, UK. Is right understanding of liberation that the heart is being liberated from the, quote, I, and that rather than my realizing the Dhamma, it is the Dhamma realizing me?
Well, we could put it that way. I'm quite often with spiritual language or language around this. The problem of even speaking about I and me and mine, these are pronouns and nouns in the English language and in other languages as well. And they refer to a thing, like a noun is an object, a thing. But, and it's useful to have such language, it's practical to have such language. But when we look closely at the way the world works, there are no things, there are only processes. All elements are changing all the time. If you have a cup, then of course you think it's a substantial thing, but if you drop it, then it's just fragments of clay. And before it was a cup, it was clay, and etc. So we tend to think as if the world is made up of these objects. So when the dissolution of the sense of I is the dissolution of the sense of I as a thing, as an object, your self as a kind of a marble or an indestructible steel ball bearing that travels through time, it is not the case. And so it is perhaps the meeting of Dhamma with sensibility that dissolves the illusion of substantial objects inhabiting the world, and you suddenly realize, oh, it's a process. So this is like looking at a waterfall from a great distance. You see a white streak on the cliff, and you think, it must be a streak of quartz or something on the cliff. Maybe it's frozen or something like that. But as you come closer, eventually you see that, that's actually water falling down the front of the cliff. I thought it was a substantial object. Now I see it's a flow, and as this a moment where the flow becomes, your perception changes to seeing it as a flow. So you no longer see it as stone or ice. You see it as water. And so that's the perceptual shift, and that dissolves the misperception of self as a thing versus maybe perhaps the process of selfing. So your name is Rob, is it? John. So you're not John, you're Johning. So you're Johning along. Now it's a different experience. Okay, well I hope that these are obscure and difficult to address in normal language, so one has to just process that. But by the way, we don't give up on nouns. We still call you John, even though you're not. Yes, let's go on.
Next question is from our live chat from Birken in Tucson. Would you talk a bit about some of the changes you've seen in stream enterers and how a layperson might continue the progression towards Sakadagami?
Well, I won't talk about my particular observations about stream enters, but I'll talk about the sutta observation of stream enters and how one moves along between these stages. So those who are not familiar with this terminology, stream enter is the first stage of enlightenment. There are 4 stages of enlightenment in classical Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism. Each one is very carefully defined, and it's a marvelous thing to have information about this, because this word enlightenment is bandied around, and this person enlightened, that person enlightened, can't they all be enlightened, and this, and there's very precise definitions in the Buddhist texts about what is meant by this word enlightenment, which happens to be just an English translation. So this consists of stages, the stages of development. So the first stage is this stream enter. You've entered the stream of the Eightfold Path, really, the stream of this vision of reality. And then, so you've caught a glimpse of this new way of seeing reality. And then you're trying to proceed to deepen this and make it more substantial and weaken again this the second stage. So Sakadagami, this is the second stage, and that is called once returner. One is a very thorough and complete human, and is not capable of falling in below a true qualitative human condition. There's enough understanding there that you can't regress. And at this stage, it's gradual, actually. So one is particularly anger and greed has been diminished greatly and does not trouble the psyche, the heart, except under extreme conditions of provocation. So one is mostly in a state of grand peace and ease and well-being, and only in extraordinary circumstances does one experience negative emotions of anger and greed. So this is the movement between them, and how you do that is that the stream enter, the one who has begun the path, has got a glimpse, just reviews and reflects on this truth that they have glimpsed, to deepen it and make it more consistent. And they work particularly on their mindfulness. So mindfulness is a form of memory, so that you remember not to get mad. You remember the vision that you saw. You remember that. So this happens with people. Like a mother is constantly telling her children, "How many times have I told you not to do that? Then you went and fell in the creek again, or you burned your hand. I mean, how many times have I warned you not to do that?" Why does the kid do that? They know perfectly well they burnt their hand before, but they forgot. So that forgetfulness is what we mean by lack of mindfulness. So this word mindfulness is just a form of retaining the instructions, remembering the instructions, what to do. And in a moment of confusion or distraction, people forget, and they fall into the same argument. They swore they would never get into such an argument with their wife again, or their husband again. And then in the midst of they're not feeling well, and then that happens, and then they fall into this argument, and then they realize, oh, there I did it again. I forgot. I had intended never to do that again, and there I go again. That's what we mean by mindfulness. So the Sotapanna, the stream entry, has to increase their mindfulness until it becomes really second nature, and only under the most extreme circumstances do they forget, do they lose their mindfulness. So that's the primary practice. I won't extend this conversation too much, but I did make a video, which is on this YouTube channel, called The Stages of Enlightenment. And so I would urge you to watch that, and you will see how you go between the stages. and what needs to be done in between each stage. Yes, Bia.
Our next question is from the live chat from Dinka. How to be harmonious with irritating people? Ignore them? Avoid them? Try to understand that the failure is always your own?
Yeah, well, I think that it's best to try to protect yourself to some degree, to be very choosy about who you keep company with and situations you put yourself in. But you can't always be that way. I mean, if you get thrown in jail, it's not like you can tell everybody, I don't want to be in jail. Let me out of here. So sometimes you're brought into the company of people who'd rather not associate with. In that case, you are to use that as your main practice, is not to hope for harmony. You're not hoping to be harmonious with them. You're realizing there is no hope for harmony. What is you can preserve your peace and well-being, and to realize that if the person is ignorant and untrained, what can you say? What can you do? There's nothing you can do. That's the nature of many humans, and there's quite often they won't change in their entire life. So your job then is just to be patient and not to focus on their fault. Just keep your eye on your own well-being and your own good heart, and that's the best remedy. And you have to practice. It's not easy, because that's real detachment from the hostility and ignorance of others. It's a great blessing to be able to do that. But I encourage people not to test themselves, not to think you can just wander into the middle of the madding crowd and hope to walk away without any reaction. It's devoutly to be hoped for that we get to that stage. The Buddha was never, he did meet antagonistic people who criticized him, who shouted at him, and he even tried to kill him. And he did not react with any kind of hostility or anger. But this is almost beyond us. And so we try to select who we associate with, and when we are in the company of difficult people, we determine that don't just blurt out the truth to them. It won't work. You just keep your peace and concern yourself with your own well-being. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Joseph in Astoria, Oregon, United States. Inspired by your talk of the same name, I decided to devote myself to a year of metta. 10 months in, I haven't yet been able to find a source of metta within, a, quote, heart, so to speak. I go through words and mechanical steps, try to smile and so forth, stare at a photo of a very sweet dog I had 50 years ago. It's probably helping in some ways, but I'm still looking for the source, the heart. Any suggestions on how to push through this impasse?
Yeah, I think that you have to find moments in your life where you're happy. And it could be in the midst of playfulness or anything like that. And that moment of happiness is similar to what it feels like to have loving kindness. Loving kindness is playful, actually, is rejoices, is joyful, is playful. Now, look, when somebody who loves somebody is talking to them and enjoying the interaction and the conversation, or somebody is playing with their dog, they love their dog, and that's why they're playing with the dog. They know the dog likes to play. It's a way of communicating. So playfulness might be the entrance to loving kindness. The other way to get a sense of it is to experience somebody who's exquisitely skilled at something. A great musician, a great athlete even, a great orator, a great actor, great talent at anything sometimes opens you up to just appreciation of what a human can do, and the fact that a human is able to share something with you as well. Another way is to actually go out and give something to somebody who needs it. Go out and find a person on the street and just give them something unasked for. It's a moment where actually you're the beneficiary. Do something that relieves another person's suffering, and then there'll be a moment of love that arises. And that person doesn't need to have, it's not because they're attractive or wonderful, it's because indifferent to that. It's to give overlooking all of their problems and faults. And it's the very act of giving is the beginning of loving kindness. Yeah. So those are a few creative approaches to this, because lots of people have never experienced love. The feeling of, others may have loved them, but it's no good. It doesn't do you any good if you haven't loved others. So this is something to be, aspire to in life, because it's the highest of the most beautiful of the emotions. We want the most beautiful of emotions. And sometimes people feel they don't deserve it. So this is something to get over too. It's not about deserving it. It's just, if you can do it, you deserve it. So do it, because it tastes good. Yeah.
Ajahn, our next question is from the live chat from Bob in Texas. My coworkers are more social than I, and we work in harmony, and I would like to keep it that way. So how can I handle idle chat with my coworkers?
Well, again, you're in at work, you're in something that is not an intentional community. You happen to be there because you work together. So you must realize that their idle chatter is something that you're not able to just tell them to shut it off. They may not even think it's a bad thing. They may think chit-chatting is a good thing. So what you're concerned with is your impatience or hostility with them. So you can't afford to, it's already bad enough that you got frivolous speech going on. You don't want to add your own discomfort and irritation with it. So you have to just hear it as if it's just the wind in the trees, the wind in the leaves. It's the sound of air coming out of the human larynx. You turn it into just kind of music or background sound, and that's your protection. But don't expect to impose harmony on a community that doesn't share the same vision, and they may not share your understanding of right speech. So this is why it's harmony in a community means that you share a vision. Yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from CM5419. I live alone and I often seek the, quote, false company of media. This has gradually become almost an addiction. Do you have any advice to wean myself off of this distraction?
Yeah, I would start by being more selective. So I would start at the beginning of the week, to actually write down the programs that you're going to watch and listen to. And this should be in your best state of mind. Should be after you've eaten and you are wide awake and you are in a good mood and in good environment. And then you make your list of programs that you think will uplift you and inform you, and then you follow that. So this is the same with going to the grocery store hungry. There's a lot of advice. Don't go to the grocery store hungry without a list, because you're going to buy a bunch of impulsive food items. Make your grocery store list after you've eaten, and have a list which is going to nourish you and not damage your diet, not fill you with junk food. So this is how you do it with media as well. You make a list in your best state of mind of the time and how much time you're going to spend watching these things. And then you have a chance, because just lying back on the couch and letting the television just drift over you, whatever comes out of it, or whatever the computer is not the way to do it. But so you have to make a plan and say, like, how much time do you want to spend on this? What is good for you? What informs you? What is uplifting? And what is not? So you have a no list, and you simply start that way, and you get in the habit of clicking off. And you can have timers that go off. You have little buttons and alarm clocks and alarm watches and stuff that remind you of that. And when you feel that thing, you click it off. So you start to get the habit of it. You start to get that. And that helps you. So and you can also form a friendship with somebody else who's wallowing in the media and wants to stop that. So you say, okay, let's make an agreement. This week we only watch 2 hours per day, and these are the programs, and then we got to tell each other if we failed. And so it's like a diet club. Why be in a diet club? How can somebody else being on a diet help you? It helps. It's peer pressure, voluntary peer pressure. So you have a media. It's a form of food. Media diet, food diets, all kinds of things can help by peers and by scheduling and precise lists and times. So that's how you approach this. Yeah.
Next question is from Jesse in Los Angeles, California. Can you explain more about the relationship between right speech and right thought?
Well, right thought precedes right speech. There is a saying, how do I know what I think until I hear what I have to say? So for some people, it actually is, speech seems to precede thought. And then you suddenly realize, I didn't know I thought that until I said that. But actually, of course, before right speech even, what precedes right speech is right intention. So this is some good advice is that don't worry about preparing words. Prepare the heart. So if you have to have difficult conversations or any conversations, prepare the heart as goodwill. So this is the Buddha's advice on correcting each other, as that, do I speak with a heart of loving kindness? And even if you're not correcting each other, if you're going to meet a friend that you love, so stir up that loving kindness, and then everything that comes out of your mouth, the right words will come out of your mouth, and not only the right words, but the right tone with the words. The words follow, and the tone follows the heart. And if the heart is in the right mode, in the mode of goodwill, then the right words will appear. And they really can't appear if the right intention is not set up and to precede the right words. So that's how it's done.
Next question is from the live chat from Clay in Denver. I've noticed that in meditation, my mind is often very obsessed or paranoid with catching and eliminating hindrances, which may or may not have arisen. This often gives rise to a lot of tension, rigidity, and discomfort. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, well, I think you're overlooking the fact that that's the hindrance. That's the hindrance of you fear to fail. You're afraid to fail at your assignment. You're maybe obsessive about getting A's on your homework there. So your homework is to overcome the hindrances, and it's done with not through fear, or it's done through other motivations. And the primary motivation is that you don't want negative things to happen to yourself. You actually have goodwill for yourself. And that if these hindrances keep on developing, then you will have unwanted results. So you actually care about yourself. But that care is not, you can't care about yourself and fill yourself with fear and worry. So that fear and worry has to go. I used to teach music a long, long time ago. So I taught lots of students, and the idea of they would worry about making a mistake. They would say, darn, I made a mistake. And I say, first thing is, if you're going to be a musician and train and so forth, don't go, darn, I mean, you make, the error is not to be accompanied by any emotional distress. The error occurs because your finger is not playing it correctly, or you don't understand it. So that's what you need to correct. It's not a fear of making a mistake, and it's not cursing yourself because you made a mistake. Get rid of that. That's not how professionals do it. And so you must be aware you are going to make mistakes, and that is fine because you are aspiring to improve your own condition, and you don't want to make your condition worse by this. So this is undertaken with goodwill and anticipation, and not polluted with self-negativity because one cannot keep up. This is not the way to do it. So you must go back and be more playful and enjoy the process. And loving kindness and playfulness and creativity get things done. And excessive worry, concern, and fear of mistakes are an impediment to this process. Okay, Pia.
Next question from the live chat is from Ines in Switzerland. I've withdrawn from society. I avoid people as much as I can. What consequences can this have in my spiritual path?
It can have good or bad consequences. It depends on why you have withdrawn. And if it's because you don't like them and you fear them or any of this stuff, it may not be a positive thing. And you might want to just, first of all, seek right association. So associate with those who are helpful to you and uplifting to you. And avoid the association with the foolish. But if you are enjoying your own solitude and you are an accomplished performer of solitude, then good on you. And feel free to enjoy it. But obviously you are associating here online. So you're asking a question, you're listening to this, and so you're associating. And this is right association. So feel free that humans don't have to be mingling with other humans all the time. And those who are balanced, wise, and emotionally well do tend to prefer their own company. And it's a proper and healthy thing. But it's not a problem to associate with the other people who are wise and uplifting. Yeah.
Next question is from Cooper in Lenexa, Kansas, United States. Many non-religious people believe death is total nothingness. Is nibbana without remainder something different or more subtle than nothingness? I struggle with nibbana as a goal when it seems so similar to materialistic conceptions of death at times.
Yeah, that's a common problem with this. Many of the descriptions of nibbana, and so first of all, let's just talk about the idea of annihilation, which is a very common view that when you die, that's it. In some disguised way, that the reality of that is that you never get to experience that. So whether people realize that or not, what they're really saying is they're not going to die. Because death has to be an experience, and if you don't exist, there's no experience. There's a philosopher, Schopenhauer, and it goes right back to the Greek philosophers that said, if you die, if you're extinguished at death, there's nothing. It's not a problem because you were non-existent before you were born. How was that? How was it to be non-existing before you were born? You don't have any experience of non-existence. You never will have any experience of non-existence. So first of all, if the problem for the Buddha is existence, is the problem, Non-existence is never a problem in any possible way. And however, the Buddha said that, he rejected the idea that you are annihilated mechanically at death. It doesn't happen that way. The problem is you're not annihilated at death. You are condemned to existence, and there is no way out of these various types of realms of very highly exalted existences or very extremely painful and suffering existences. They all have intrinsic unsatisfactory elements to them. Any conceivable existence. So whatever nibbana is not to be concerned with. But the definition of nibbana as one attains nibbana in this life and walks around experiencing nibbana. So one definition that you can be sure of is that it's the cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the cessation of suffering, and it is the highest possible happiness. So that's something to look forward to in this very life. It always happens in existence. You always experience this in existence. And it's an experience. What happens at parinibbana, at the death of a fully enlightened person, is something beyond the capacity of language, because our language and our words are always to do with specifics of this life. The language is developed in human societies, and this language doesn't speak about such a transition or experience. It's just left as something called the deathless. So I wouldn't worry about death there. It's called the deathless. It's called the sublime, the beautiful, the ultimate, the best, the highest. So I would just stay with those terms and not try to figure out exactly what that is, because since you haven't experienced it, you can't conceive of it, and you have to wait for the experience of it. So you aspire to the experience of it, and then, as most of the arahants and the Buddhas said, it's basically hard to talk about. So you just have to accept that it would have been talked about very explicitly a long time ago by the Buddha, but the Buddha is aware of the limits of language, but he's saying, like, nobody needs to fear this. Don't fear enlightenment. It goes against the kind of the clinging and craving of ordinary people's ideas of happiness, but it's just they don't understand it. So in that you have to just trust the Buddha. It's probably really good. The guy was really smart, so I'm going to go for it. That's all you can say. Now, we have come to the end of our Q&A, and so we shall sign off today.